The Monaco Grand Prix has been a staple in the F1 calendar for almost a century now. And why wouldn't it be? The race weekend at Monaco is a spectacle in itself, with celebrities and public figures coming in to watch the race on a track that is set beside the scenic waters of Monte Carlo, all the way into the heart of the city. But after more than 60 races at the historic venue, the Monaco Grand Prix spot on the F1 calendar is in question for the first time, with no contract yet signed to continue racing in the city past the 2022 season. This leads me to today's topic, which is, should Monaco keep its spot in the F1 calendar? Or is it time to say farewell to this iconic place? Stick around to find out. 2020 and 2021 were down years for the iconic Monaco Grand Prix due to the pandemic. So this season's race is Monaco's official comeback to being the go-to race for fans and VIPs. There is still a good amount of people that see Monaco as F1's crown jewel race, even with F1 still not signing on the dotted line to continue racing in the city. And F1 has every reason to do so. While VIPs and drivers get to experience the allure of Monte Carlo during race weekend, spectators at home who tune in just to see some good hard-nosed racing are left more disappointed than not. Part of F1's allure to spectators is seeing drivers push the limit just to get ahead of the car ahead of them. And in a track like Monaco, where there isn't much space to encourage drivers to go for a move, the first corner at Saint-Devote has a barrier on the outside, while any attempt at the Grand Hotel, also the slowest corner on any F1 track by the way, must be done with an element of surprise and target that is aware and intelligent enough to not put both of them in the wall when defending. Arguably the best spot to make a pass is at the Nouvelle chicane, but even there is an inch too wide and you're ramming your car into the barriers. The downhill exit after the iconic tunnel has a bumpy surface as well, which may lead drivers to lose control and head straight to the runoff area. So as I said, the risk to reward ratio on overtaking opportunities in Monaco is not enough for drivers to go for a move. Of all the races on the F1 calendar, Monaco has the largest amount of laps, with 78 in total. This wouldn't be a problem if the track would allow for high-speed action and overtaking, but we've established that this isn't the case, so the race can drag on after the initial burst of excitement and romance of racing in Monaco finally wears off after a certain number of laps. Another thing to consider is that we're now in the era of cars which are bigger and bulkier than its predecessors. Not to mention that most teams on the grid are still figuring out the proper setup for their cars to make it more predictable and easier to maneuver in a circuit like Monaco. Drivers would have differing opinions on whether the race should stay on the calendar or not. Hometown hero Charles Leclerc would obviously vote for the race to stay on the calendar, saying, "It would be a bad move for both parties. I have never known Monaco without F1, apart from COVID reasons in 2020. And F1 without Monaco for me is not F1. F1 has some historic tracks like Silverstone and Monza, and Monaco too, and they should stay on the calendar." His current rival, Red Bull's Max Verstappen, on the other hand, thinks that it is impractical now to keep racing in Monaco given the bigger cars, but also believes that Monaco's historical value to F1's history is unmatched. In his words, "Let's say like this, I think if they would propose the plans nowadays with how the track layout is, probably it would not be on the calendar. But I think because of the historic value to it, and I mean, well, I think the amazing weekends we've had, throughout the years, I think it belongs on the calendar. And of course, with the cars we have now, they're a bit too big, a bit too long, a bit too heavy for the track layout, but it is something special. And I do think, yeah, we should continue." Ferrari's Carlos Sainz would agree with Max and would add, "Agree, I think Monaco deserves anyhow to be on the F1 calendar. I think it's a great place to come to." When you think about Formula 1, a lot of people think about Monaco. So yeah, it would be nice to put an overtaking place, I'm not going to lie. Like this, the show could be a bit better on Sunday, but even if not, I still think everyone knows a weekend here is about qualifying around the pit stops. And everyone is already expecting that, so it's not like we're missing out on much. The oldest driver on the grid and two-time world champion Fernando Alonso would also argue that it would not make sense to take Monaco off the calendar just because it doesn't produce as much action as the fans would want to see. In his words, "I don't see any reason why it should not be in the calendar. Because overtaking is difficult, it is difficult also in Singapore. It has been difficult in Barcelona, it has been difficult in Budapest. Before DRS, before 2011 or whatever, there were no overtakings in Budapest or in Barcelona or in Monaco, in Singapore. And there were not talks about, removing those races in the calendar. So now there is a lot of talk, with social media, how the world is. You need to talk constantly about things, and random things. And this is one thing that doesn't make sense. As much as Monaco fails to keep spectators glued to their screens to watch the whole, drivers have always said that driving in Monaco is the hardest challenge that no other track can provide. Charles Leclerc would also describe the feeling of driving on the track, as Monaco is one of the best tracks out there. In terms of qualifying, there are no places I enjoy as much as here. and where the driver can make as much difference. The races are so close. The danger, you can still feel it because you really have the sensation of speed. And in terms of qualifying, it is probably the most exciting of the year. I agree in the races there are maybe some things we could change here and there to help overtaking, but in terms of challenge for the drivers, it is one of the toughest challenges of the year, and a track like this should stay on the calendar. Many would argue that part of Monaco's selling point is that it has stuck to its traditions, but that isn't good for business from F1's perspective. Lewis Hamilton has been adamant every year in saying that something has to be changed to make the race more engaging and more competitive. F1 has pitched the idea to the Automobile Club de Monaco of possibly changing the chicane after the tunnel, but these have fallen on deaf ears. But the ACM has things to think about, because for one, Monaco isn't the cash cow that it once used to be. Many street circuits are being added to the calendar. This year, Miami just held its first official Grand Prix, which F1 sees as having massive potential to beat out Monaco in terms of viewership and attendance. Next year, F1 will also be racing on the streets of Las Vegas, which arguably could be the most famous city in the world. So Monaco and the ACM don't have much bargaining leverage as they used to, and with how uneventful this past race was, where there were minimal changes again in position once the checkered flag was waved compared to how things ended up in qualifying. Without Ferrari's pit stop blunder, Leclerc and Sainz would have been a 1-2 followed by the boys in blue at 3 and 4. The battle for 5th was really the only battle, with Mercedes' George Russell moving up one spot from qualifying where he finished 6th and beat out Lando Norris for 5th. P7 to P10 would only have one newcomer come Sunday's race, with Valtteri Bottas beating Esteban Ocon for P9 and Sebastian Vettel dropping a spot back to P10. While the history of Monaco is its main selling point, holding on to it solely for that reason may not do anyone good. Maybe a modified Monaco that has a balance of tradition and embrace of the present may possibly survive. But only time will tell if the ACM and F1 finally see eye to eye. But what do you think? Should the ACM let go of the reins and let F1 rejuvenate this classic Grand Prix? Or is it time to move on to newer and better things? Let us know in the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe.